emailing me a copy of the PDF, creating a database of all the responses, creating a dashboard with heat maps and all that stuff. That would have taken 6 weeks. I built that entire thing with AI in 3 days, and it was unbelievable. You want to customize your own prompts. And one of the things that we always add to ours is I want you to identify the things that would have escaped my attention that will add value or lead to something else in this conversation.
Welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. I'm your host, Debra Chantry-Taylor, and I'm passionate about helping business owners lead a better life by creating a better business. On the show, I bring on people who are familiar with the EOS tools and they share with us their experiences. But today's guest is really special. He is the adjunct instructor of AI at Louisiana State University. He has used EOS in his digital agency, so understands the concepts of processes, core processes. And he is the creator of the AI strategy canvas and also scalable prompt engineering. What he's going to share with you today is how to use AI to increase your revenue, accelerate your growth, and save you and your team bucket loads of time through using AI to improve all of your business core processes. John Munsell is the author of Ingrain and is also the CEO of Bizzuka. Welcome to the show, John. It's so nice to see you again. How are you?
I'm great, Deborah. Nice to see you again. I love the EOS symbols in the background there. We got the framework.
Very, very passionate about EOS, as you will know. But today we're talking about something very, very different, aren't we? So today we're going to be talking about what you are really good at, which is the AI side of business. So John, for the people who haven't come across you before, why don't you give us a bit of background about your history, how you got to where you are now and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I spent 17 years in financial services, and in that role, I learned a little bit about direct mail marketing and financial analysis. And then when the web came out in 97, I thought, oh, this is where the future is headed. So I started a company that built web applications, gradually got into building mobile applications, and then we built websites, and then we did digital marketing and became a digital marketing agency. And then about 4 years ago, I sold off the agency side because my wife and I were about to become empty nesters, famous last words for those of you who are threatening to become empty nesters. And so I thought, well, this would be a great time to be a little bit more mobile. And so we sold that part of the agency or the company off. In that, I started to work with CEOs every Friday and teach them a little bit about marketing. And going from a high of 40 employees down to a 2.5, I had to do certain things that I no longer had a staff to do. And so I was using AI to do that. And then as I was working with these CEOs, they became way more interested in how I was using AI than anything about marketing. And so gradually, I had to develop frameworks. I had to develop processes. Being an EOS shop, I do a lot about structuring our company so that we could scale and grow. And so I developed these frameworks or proven processes, as you would say. And next thing you know, I'm teaching CEOs how to actually use AI in a more scalable fashion. So I developed a framework called the AI strategy canvas, which teaches businesses and people what an AI LLM needs in order to give the best output. So it organizes it so you can understand it very simply. And then I created this other process that we call scalable prompt engineering, which just allows you to create a prompt when you need to share that process with other people in the organization. It's a very structured methodology. And then the next thing I know, the provost of LSU, Louisiana State University, heard what I was doing, called me up, wanted to come over. At the time, Deborah, honestly, I didn't know what a provost was. So he came over, introduces himself. I'm the executive vice president provost of LSU. Do you know what that is? And I said, honestly, no. I thought, I thought he was an intern or something, just basically doing something for LSU. And I'm like, yeah, I'll help you out, buddy. Turns out there's the president of the university, and then there's him. He's over all of academia across all of LSU's campuses across the state. I'm like, oh, I should have worn a nicer shirt.
Yes.
Right. So then he asked me if I wanted to teach the honors class the next semester. And I was like, I'm just not really cut out to be a professor. And it was an hour drive from where we live. But I said, I think we could have a bigger impact if we went through LSU's continuing education program and went directly to businesses. And we helped businesses and their employees understand how to use AI so it can amplify their productivity. I said, the problem with universities is they teach people how to build LLMs, but they don't teach people how to use them. And the vast majority of us are going to use them. We're not going to build them. It's kind of like trying to teach students how to build Excel rather than use Excel. The rest of the planet is going to use it. There are only a handful that are going to build it. So anyway, that's how it got started. And the next thing you know, we started to grow, and we're training large corporations and small corporations, anywhere from 1 or 2 man bands to a company that has 50,000 employees. So it's all over the board.
Wow. And you've written a book that talks about all these things we're talking about here now, right?
What's interesting now that, I think about it, we started a group. So I wrote a book called Ingrain AI that I released back in March or April of 2024. 25, sorry. What year is this? I've already forgotten. But it came out. And then that was, my process there was I taught everybody how to do this. So it wasn't one of these books that you read that tells you why AI is important. This is a literal manual with frameworks and everything else, very much like Traction, if you will.
The how-to book, I call it. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so if a business wanted to, they could read the book and they would learn how to implement AI in their organization. But on the other end, as you know, there are a lot of businesses that say, can you just come and do this for us? And so in October of last year, I launched the Ingrain AI Certified Implementer Program. And ironically enough, Deborah, we have the majority, let me rephrase that. The country with the highest number of people in our program outside of the US is Australia.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
So we have like 5 people in the program from Australia, which is really cool.
That is cool. I tell you what, it's certainly, I'm a member of an entrepreneurs organization over here. And I mean, it's definitely, people are using AI a lot in the entrepreneurs organization in terms of using it in their business. Yeah. But really more around the basic stuff around, helping write things, helping ask the questions. But it's a lot more powerful than that, isn't it?
Way more. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing is that most companies that we talk to, they typically have started in marketing because they see the content creation aspects of it. But what will happen is the CEO will become interested in that because they see somebody in marketing producing things, and then they start reading about it, and then they get fearful. They get excited, and then they get fearful. And that's typically when we get called, where the CEO will call us and say, I know I need to do this, but I don't know enough about it to lead the organization. Tell me what else it can do. And so we have a workshop that we'll put on for their organization so they understand how they can use AI in HR, how they can use AI in finance, how they can use it in sales, and of course in marketing, in other departments. We actually work with one of the world's largest furniture manufacturers for business furniture, office furniture. And they have space planners in there. Okay. I'm not in that world, but I used to be in the office space business, so I knew what space planning was. And so we're teaching them how to use AI in that realm, which is way different from anything I would think, you know? It's not your typical use of AI. Like I said, we're not writing blog posts in that space planning thing. And one of our students, one of the things in our training is what we call a capstone project. You have to produce an AI tool that shaves 3 hours or more per week off of your job. And so we work with them to produce this capstone project. And one of the guys from this organization built something that absolutely blew my mind. In fact, it's so complicated, I can't even explain it to you. But he has all of these architectural plans, and in those plans, it calls for, these desks and these chairs and all these different offices. And so they go out and they order it from different manufacturers. And then those documents come in as that stuff comes in. So now he has to match it all up to make sure that all those orders came in. And then he has to produce an artifact that says, okay, all of these chairs go here, these desks go there, these, et cetera. He built it all, and it's a massive undertaking. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised. But it was cool to watch him do it. And then he literally shot me a text 2 days ago, and he said, "So Claude just released Opus 4.6 not too long ago at the time of us recording this." And he said he retested his prompts in Opus 4.6, and he was blown away. He said, "I can't wait to show you." So I'm like excited to see what he does. And then, of course, in finance, I don't know whether you've ever used Chat or whether you've ever used Claude to build a spreadsheet.
I personally haven't, but I've certainly heard of it and seen people do it. Yeah.
It's stunning. And then there's Claude Cowork, which is amazing. There's Grok, which does really interesting things. I'm talking about tools outside of just ChatGPT that you can use in your business. But one of the interesting tools that, I don't know if you've ever played with, is one called GenSpark. Are you familiar with GenSpark?
I'm not. No.
Oh man, it's powerful as well. It does a whole bunch of things. It's like this Swiss Army knife of AI tools. It's really fascinating.
You do realize you're going to ruin my weekend now because I'm going to spend the rest of the weekend
Oh yeah,
researching.
yeah. You're going to go down some rabbit holes now.
Absolutely. But what I'm hearing you say, and I'm going to tie it back to EOS because we obviously talk about the proven processes, the internal proven processes for all of the main functions in the business. What I've just heard you say is pretty much every main function can somehow utilize AI to improve their efficiency and shave time off the workload.
Totally. Yeah, completely. And so here's our philosophy. So, if you read or research, you'll see a lot of research that says 90 some odd percent of businesses have adopted AI, right? The problem is that if you read the footnotes at the bottom of that research, you'll then see how they define AI adoption. And AI adoption in the research is using one tool in your organization that happens to have AI in it. That could be a customer facing chatbot on your website. It could be you have Microsoft Copilot just because you have Microsoft 365. It could be any number of things, but it's one application in the organization that has AI somehow associated with it. It could be Photoshop. Photoshop has AI in it, right? To me, that's not AI adoption. That's just dipping your toe in the water. AI adoption is when everyone in your organization who uses a computer more than 30% of the day can use AI with their own fingertips at their own desktops to build their own tools to accelerate their productivity. And they know it enough to replicate their expertise inside of AI. So we have this thing that we call the 10 levels of AI mastery. And most businesses, their employees are operating at level 2 or level 3. And I mean, we've done this research over and over again. And we know that if we can get the majority of employees operating at levels 5 or 6, then the impact to the organization is dramatic, because now you have literally everybody in every facet of the organization building their own tools, and they've learned how to get AI to produce with excellence. And what I say is, if you don't know what excellence looks like in your own domain, you will always get average or less out of AI. And so we teach people how to tap into their own expertise and drive that out of AI. That's where the real impact is.
I love it. That's fantastic. So I think you said earlier, though, that what tends to happen, people get excited by AI, then they get scared of it. And the fear kind of comes in. And what you're talking about when you're starting to really incorporate into the business like that, I'm guessing the fears people have is around security, around losing jobs. I don't know. What are the fears people have around AI in the business?
All of the above. All right. So the leaders are afraid that the people underneath them know more about it than they do. And so they don't know how to lead. No, that's a legit fear. Like I have CEOs call me and say, "Can you train me?" And they don't want to teach anybody until they know it themselves. And that makes total sense, right? And so we will train them. The employees, on the other hand, are afraid that if they learn it and they use it, they will lose their jobs, right? They're suspicious that you're just trying to get me to use it so that you can replace me. And a lot of people on the IT side are afraid for the security side of things, which they should be. The more powerful AI gets, the more AI, or the more security falls behind, because AI is progressing far faster than security can keep up with it. And so that's a legitimate fear. But what you wouldn't do is take your 3-year-old who just learned how to ride a tricycle and slap him on a Harley and say, "Go at it." You wouldn't do that. And what happens in an organization is they they either know or don't know that their employees are using AI. If they don't know their employees are using AI, we call that shadow AI. So they're kind of bringing their own AI to work, right? They're using their own chat GPT licenses or Claude or whatever the tool is. And they're typically using a free license. The free license then doesn't allow you to tell the AI, "Don't use what I upload," and train the model. So anything they upload could be distributed inside of AI in ways that you don't want, you know? So we have to teach people how to use it, but we also have to control the licensing so that we can at least protect all of our IP, all of our protected information, and all that stuff. So that part needs to be addressed. But once you teach people how to use it, and you teach them how to take their own capabilities and amplify them using AI, they start to enjoy their jobs more, because they get all the stuff that is the drudgery, the things that drive them crazy, the gnats flying around their ear, as I call it. They can hand that off to AI, but they also know what that should look like coming back, right? And so what we try to do is teach them how to do that at scale. So you're not just mesmerized because you threw something in ChatGPT and it gave you this voluminous report. And you're like, "Oh, this is amazing." But really, when you dig in, you realize, "Oh, man, it's missing a lot, you know? But once you learn how to do it the right way, then you can teach the person next to you, right? And that person next to you goes, "What did you just do?" And you're showing them, "This report that used to take me 2.5 days to produce, I can produce it now in 20 minutes." And that's where their heads start to explode, you know?
It's delegate and elevate on steroids, isn't it? So, because if you actually get this right, it's not about you losing your job. It's about actually freeing you up to do the things that add a huge amount more value to the business and are probably more stimulating for you as well. Because I'm guessing a lot of the stuff that AI can do is the boring, repetitive stuff that none of us really wants or needs to do?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of examples I can give you. So there's a book called The Corporate Life Cycles by a guy named Ichak Adizes. I want to say it was written, I don't know, 15 plus years ago. But the principles hold true. It's one of the more complicated books you'll ever read, but man, I'll tell you what, it became my Bible as I grew our first business. And what it does is it breaks people down into four categories: producers, which are the people that just want to do the work, slide the food under the door and leave me alone. I'm going to crank out the work. All right. Then there are the administrators. Those are the people that like the rules. They like to create the rules. They like to work within the rules. And then there are the entrepreneurs. Those are the idea guys, the innovators, the ones that are willing to take a chance and take a risk and, make things happen. And then you have the integrators, and those are the people that like to create culture, that like to get everybody together, that make a team work more effectively. And we all have some of those traits to varying degrees, right? I happen to be a high E, so I'm a big idea guy, big entrepreneur. I've got an assistant that's a high P, a producer, which is what I need to complement me, right? My operations person is a high administrator and a high integrator. And so he likes to build culture, but build rules around it, likes people to work within that. There's a balance as you move into the growth phase of your company where you want more producers, less administrators, more entrepreneurs, and less integrators. But as you move up to what they call prime, then you want a good balance of producers, administrators, entrepreneurs, and a few integrators. When you get that out of balance, when you have way too many administrators, then you chase off the entrepreneurs and you chase off the integrators, you're now going down the slope towards crashing and burning, right? And so there's a delicate balance of keeping that in play. And the reason I bring that up is we test an organization for that. So we test all the individuals in the organization to see what the balance is, because if you think about it at its core, what is AI? AI is a producer and an administrator, right? AI produces, and if you give it the rules, it will maintain structure. If you don't do it right, it will hallucinate. That's a whole different topic, right? But but it takes the administrative roles and it takes the producer roles and it makes them really fast. Now, if I am a producer and AI just took everything that really, is my job justification, what do I do with that free time? Well, what we try to teach people to do is think differently. So we try to incorporate critical thinking skills so we can move them to where they can explore new aptitudes. Or we say, look, because you're so good at producing, you have the intellectual capacity and the domain expertise in our organization to drive excellence from everybody else who's trying to use AI in the production realm. Does that make sense? So that producer is so amplified by AI that combination is extremely powerful. So the last thing we would want to do is let that person go, because they just made AI super, super powerful. So we're actually making them 10x who they are, and we want to spread that throughout the organization. On the other end, if I've got an entrepreneur, an idea person, I can use AI to take the stuff that the entrepreneur hates, which is the production and the administration. I get AI to do that. Now my entrepreneur, my idea guy can be even more creative and more productive in our organization. But you have to know how to do that in an organization so that you can get your best people to be even better versions of themselves. And in that case, they're not fearful of AI. They're welcoming it because it makes them even more productive and happier, frankly, in their jobs. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
It's a different way of looking at it. That's for sure.
It's lovely. It's really good. It's actually really interesting. On a personal level, I've been trying to get my EA to to embrace AI a bit more. We use it a lot for the very general stuff, but not really in terms of taking away some of the repetitive stuff. So I think I'm going to make her read your book and see if she can get some ideas from that.
Good. Yeah, do it. She certainly will. I have prompts in the back end of the book that will teach how to do certain things. One of the things that you probably have noticed if you look at LinkedIn, it's if you haven't gotten to this place, you will pretty soon, where you can spot an AI post a mile away because it follows a pattern. In fact, pattern is one of the words that it really likes. So it follows a pattern, and then you're going to see replies to your LinkedIn post that follow a pattern, and they're AI generated replies. And what's frustrating is when I see an AI generated reply to an AI generated post, then what I'm seeing is AI talking to AI. And what benefit is that other than some sort of an algorithm trick to LinkedIn, that you're losing the human connection? And so I get more nauseated by the person who's replying to my post in AI. I don't really want to be connected to them. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I see it all the time, and I often block people because of that. But my question for you, can you train AI out of looking like AI? Because you said you can tap into your expertise and your experience and you can teach it what you do. So is there a way to actually break that pattern and create something that is tapping into because I've used it for writing more around sometimes generating ideas, usually kind of taking my very verbose stuff and bringing it down to a lot sort of more concise, but also to challenge certain things as well. So, I mean, you can use it in many, many different ways, but can you break the pattern that it has so that people won't know it's AI?
Yes, you can. So there are a couple ways to do that. First of all, what we do, we have what we call containers. And so I'm going to give a container around the style of voice that I want. Inside of that container are variables. So instead of saying, I want you to talk in a, casual voice with a little bit of humor and blah, 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 I'm actually using variables to tell it specifically how to calibrate it. So I'm using a variable about sentence length. I'm using a variable around paragraph length. I'm using paragraph length. I'm using one around humor. So humor equals 3 out of 10, right? 3/10. All of the AI tools know what that means. 3 out of 10, they know what that means. So if the thing gets off the rails and starts being silly, I'm going to dial down the humor level and I'm going to crank up the tone level. So we have a tone 77 out of 10, those things. So we have these different variables. I talk about that in my book. But that is like the difference between the old stereo you used to have in your car where you just had bass and treble to now having a mixer board where you can start to dial things up and down so it sounds a lot better to you. The other is providing it with your own thoughts as opposed to just telling it to go write me a blog post about X. You teach the AI in your prompt to have a back and forth with you, to push you, to challenge your own thoughts. And then you start to integrate your thoughts into it. So you're now, instead of telling it to go write something, you're having a dialogue with the AI back and forth, and it pushes you to think a little bit differently, and you can push back. And then it'll compose something that sounds really good. One of the other blocks in our AI strategy canvas, the eighth block, there are 9 blocks in it. The eighth one is the rules block. So we teach people how to create rules that tell it, what not to do, right? Don't use certain words. They're getting better at what you would call negative prompting. But you can create a list of exceptions. Don't use this, right? Don't use the word delve. You remember how that used to be a big word, right? They would always use. They're getting better at that. But what's cool is the better you get at identifying patterns, the better you are at changing your rules to break AI out of the patterns. But you will only see it when you're starting to write stuff and you're like, oh, this sounds great. But you have to, and this is where discernment comes in. You have to be able to read what it just wrote and go, okay, this sentence is 15 words long. It doesn't need to be. It sounds good. In other words, it sounds intelligent. But when you really break it down, it it's not making sense with the rest of the context in the sentence. It uses a phrase that hasn't really identified what it's talking about very clearly. And you can kind of see that pattern as you go through a lot of writing. You can see that. But all of those things just mean the AI is missing context and direction. And when you learn to feed it with the proper context and direction, what it writes, man, it's good. But not all tools are for the same thing, right? I love Claude Sonnet 4.6 for writing, does a great job. I am enamored with Claude's Opus 4.6. I think it's amazing. If I'm writing business stuff, I'm going to go to ChatGPT 5.2. I'm also using a lot of Gemini, depending upon what I'm doing. If I need real-time information, I'm going to Grok and Perplexity. And what I typically do is I realize how fast it will write, but I use multiple LLMs to produce all this. So I'll do research in Perplexity and pull back a lot of information. I'll do some research in Grok to pull back more information. I'll take those artifacts and then I'll put them into a project that I have in Claude that massages all that and then asks me for my thoughts. What do I want to put into that? Do I agree or disagree? Do I want to challenge what's in that article, or how do I want to synthesize it? When you do that, you might take a little bit more time, but what it produces is so much more meaningful and thoughtful. You're not regurgitating what everybody else says. You're now integrating information and you're informing people. And so if you want to know how to get AI to recommend your site, everybody's talking about getting ranked in Google search engine. Now it's really cool if when somebody does some research inside of AI that they point to you as a resource. The way to do that is to write meaningful content that acts as a resource, not as a regurgitation of the obvious. And that's how you do it. Does that make sense? You do your research first from other tools, pull it together, and then you compose what you're trying to compose.
I must admit, I've done quite a fair bit of work on this on my own things. If you put in best EOS implementer in Australia, you'll very quickly find me there, which is good. Yeah. But it is interesting. I don't know. Do you find yourself fighting with your LLMs at times? I mean, I get into some really heated debates and I've threatened to send her to Siberia at times because, you ask her not to do something and it's like she just keeps doing it. It's like, I've told you, do this one more time, I'm sending you to Siberia. And we have a bit of a joke now, but yeah.
Yeah. I used to, right? I like, for instance, the M dash. I like, would you quit with the M dashes, But I like me a good M dash every now and then.
The M dash is a beautiful piece of grammar and used in the right context. It was just overused. That was the challenge. Yeah.
But not every other sentence, right? And that's the frustrating thing. But yeah, I used to get frustrated with it until I learned how to create the right, what we would call a prompt stack. And I create that prompt stack, and then it becomes the system instructions inside of a Claude project or a custom GPT or a Gemini gem or something like that. So all of my writing framework is inside of the project, and all of the knowledge-based documents are in that project. I probably have 100 different projects inside of Claude. I probably have 20 Gemini gems. I probably got 150 or so inside of ChatGPT, and they all do different things. But the struggle though is they have overlapping knowledge-based documents. And so if I update one document, I now have to remember, okay, I got to go change it in 75 different places. And that's frustrating.
That must get better over time, surely.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, they're going to figure this out. I mean, like, I know that if you're a Microsoft 365 user, you can integrate with OneDrive and SharePoint. And so then you could use Copilot as your mechanism, and it will, you change that file once inside of your SharePoint folders, and you don't have to worry about all the different places that you've stored it. But for the rest of us who are using the other LLMs, you got to track it. But if have you used Claude's Cowork?
No, I haven't. No,
Okay. Are you on a Mac or PC?
I'm on a Mac.
Oh, fabulous. Then you can get it. So Cowork is fantastic. Now it works on your drive. Okay. So it's an app that you can download, but it literally works on your drive, and you can tell it which folders to work within, but it'll organize things like here's what I did. Because again, I had like 75 different Claude projects. I had to figure out where all the files were. So I fire up Cowork and I said, I want you to go into all of my Claude projects, and I want you to make a list of all of the knowledge base documents that are in them. And I want them to have a date that shows when they were created, because I'm very careful to make sure they have version dates in there. And then, through a couple of steps, I said, I want you to tell me which of the files in which of the projects need to be updated. Because it's going, okay, there are 8 versions of this document. This one appears to be the current one, blah, 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 blah. And it would do it. And so now the next step was, okay, the source documents are in this folder, this folder, this folder, and this folder. I need you to organize all of those, archive the ones that are out of date, create a single folder with all of the ones that are the most current, and then tell me which, things I need to update. I'm not exaggerating, in 20 seconds, it built all the folder structure, organized everything, moved all the old ones into an archive folder, all on my hard drive. And I'm like, that's insane. And so it gave me the directions to tell my assistant, okay, all of these projects need to be updated and made current, and we need to change the naming convention of the files, blah, blah, blah. And actually, I did that inside of Cowork too. Now that I think about it, I changed the naming conventions of the files so that the date was up front and blah, blah. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it was amazing.
I'm excited. There's so many things I can see the potential of it. I am curious though. You mentioned the 3 out of 10 humor. I'm wondering, if you go 10 out of 10 humor, does it become dad jokey, or how does it behave?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, okay, then you get into something called prompt conflict, but let me give you an example. One of our students was building a chatbot for ophthalmology clinics. And so the idea was it would train the employees of the ophthalmology clinic how to sell ophthalmology services, right? So they would interact with this thing going back and forth. She comes to, we have these things called office hours. So our training is recorded, but every, 3 days a week, we have live office hours, and you can come bring your problems to us. And so she said, John, I need your help with my chatbot. I'm like, sure, what's up? She says, I can't get it to stop talking like a pirate. And I was like, what? And I'm like, a legit pirate, right? And she goes, yeah. And I said, well, show me. Cause I was like, maybe she's, making it exaggerating. And so she prompts it, and sure enough, it goes, "Arr, matey," I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So I said, all right, let me look at your prompt. Well, she didn't use the container method with the variables. She just used a container and says, I want you to use a little bit of humor. And then she said, oh, at the beginning, she goes, you're a helpful assistant that's teaching our people how to do X, Y, and Z. And then down below it, she says, I want you to use a little bit of humor. Don't be so dry. Be more humorous, kind of like that crazy uncle. Okay. That's nutso. So think about what she just said. Okay. She said, I want you to use a little bit of humor. Because originally she said, I want you to use some humor. And then she said a little bit of humor. And then she would say less. She couldn't get it to calibrate. But I said, look, your problem is that you said kind of like that crazy uncle. the uncle part tells the AI it's talking to a child. For some reason, it thinks that children thinks pirates are funny, but because you said it's a crazy uncle, it's going to go into this crazy thing. And it collides with the helpful assistant part as well. So she had a chocolate mess going on. So we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, we're going to knock down the humor to 2 out of 10. We're going to give it a more directive about what the tone is, what the style is, and all that stuff. Using the variables, cleaned it up in literally a minute and a half, and it was talking normal. But she didn't, who would have thunk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I can imagine there's some real horror stories out there around people getting these things wrong. Sure.
But, if you did crank it up, just to your earlier question, if you did crank it up to 10, but if you told it, "I'm writing I'm writing a medical brief for a medical journal. I want humor to be 10 out of 10." It would see that as major conflict. "Whoa, no, this medical journal, and you're a brain surgeon or whatever." It's gonna go, "Okay, 10 out of 10 for that." That's where the conflict comes in. It would then make it more familiar, but it might make an occasional quip, but it wouldn't go crazy because of that conflict. On the other end, if you said, "I'm gonna write an email to a friend and I want, you know, humor to be 10 out of 10, yeah, it'd go bonkers on you. Every line would try to be a one-liner. You could also throw in there sarcasm equals 9 out of 10 and
Oh,
watch what
gosh.
happens. It's really funny.
I am going to have some fun with this now for sure. Okay, we could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but what I would love to know is what has been the sort of one of the biggest efficiency gains you've seen in a business?
In ours or any business.
Any business? No.
I think that, the biggest one that we personally have accomplished is I did something the other day that literally would have taken me 3 weeks to do. And that was build an application. Okay, that PAEI stuff I was telling you about, I needed to test an organization that has 12,000 employees, but I wanted a dashboard where they could visualize how their organization was structured. I wanted them to see that their PAEI formula against the 10 levels of AI mastery. And, having been in the software business for 27 years, I had a team of developers. What I envisioned was I needed to send out a survey to everybody. I needed to really calibrate the heck out of that survey. I needed to get those results back in. And then I needed to create a report for everybody who took the assessment. I wanted them to see their own profile. I wanted AI to analyze their data and give them a nice narrative that explained, where they were. But then I wanted the owner of the company to see a dashboard so they could visualize in a heat map where their people were in the 10 levels of mastery and where the hotspots were in the PAEI framework. Okay. That would have just writing the requirements document for that would have taken me 2 weeks back and forth with two developers. Building that as an application that somebody would go take the survey. I mean, writing the survey would have taken 3 weeks. Building the survey, letting somebody take it, giving them the display results when they're finished, emailing them a PDF that's nice, neatly laid out, emailing me a copy of the PDF, creating a database of all the responses, creating a dashboard with the heat maps and all that stuff. That would have taken 6 weeks. I probably would have charged $70,000 to do that. I built that entire thing with AI in 3 days, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just amazing how it works. So, yeah, you want to you want to talk about an extreme example?
That is an extreme example. Yeah. It all comes down to knowing, it's like everything, isn't it? It's like shit in, shit out. You've got to make sure that you actually know how to use it and how to get the best results from it. Hey, I would say we could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but unfortunately, we haven't got all the time in the world. I'd love to you to give us the top 3 tips that you would give somebody who's considering taking AI beyond where they're probably at, as you said, level 1, level 2, maybe level 3, up to a 5 or a 6. What would be the top 3 tips you would say to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't get enamored with the idea that you're going to get it all in one place. In other words, you should have in your arsenal multiple LLMs, and I would probably not do fewer than 3. So I would probably have ChatGPT, I would probably have Claude, I would probably have either Gemini or Perplexity. I'm probably going to lean more towards Gemini because Gemini does images, does videos. That whole Gemini suite is amazing. So I would say, make sure that you have paid versions, not free versions, but paid versions. So those 3 combined will be $60. What does that give you back in terms of time? If you can't recover $60, then there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? But as in your job, that combo will save you probably 8 to 10 hours a week. But so I would make sure that you get multiple models. Then I would say you need to quickly move to where you're not just having a question and answer back, but you learn how to structure prompts so that when you go and see them again 2 months from now, you know what it's doing, right? And so you want to learn how to structure the prompts in a methodical fashion. You want to learn how to save the prompts so that you can use them later. And then you want to get to the point where once you produce an artifact, like a report, like a research report or something like that, that you're storing that. And then you now move up to another level where that becomes a knowledge-based document in a project or a GPT or something like that, so that your project has system instructions that are based on the what we call scalable prompting. So, you can calibrate it and you can organize it. And then it has all that information in there. Like, when we're developing a proposal, our pricing is in there, our description of our persona and our company and all that stuff is already in there. So I don't have to do it over and over again. So that would be the next thing, quickly learn how to build these tools for yourself, but make sure you understand how to build a knowledge-based document as well as a prompt that can sit there as a set of system instructions. And then the third thing is I would make sure that you learn how to get AI to uncover things that you would not normally uncover. Like, for instance, in our meetings, we hold 90+% of our meetings over Zoom. And if we're not holding them over Zoom, and I wish I had it here, we're holding them live and we use what's called a Plod note. I don't know whether you're familiar with a Plod note, PLAUD. It's the size of a credit card, but it's twice as thick. It's an AI recorder. And so we'll take it into a meeting and say, do you mind if I record the meeting? And they're like, no. And so we just turn on the recorder. It provides a transcript, just like our AI note takers in Zoom do. So we have a transcript. All of these tools give you a default way to analyze the transcript, but those are optimized around creating a to-do list and a follow-up. You want to customize your own prompt so that you add some things to it. And one of the things that we always add to ours is I want you to identify the things that would have escaped my attention that will add value or lead to something else in this conversation. And so you're asking it to look for the nuance that normally would be overlooked. And what it comes up with will blow your mind, Deborah. I mean, it's amazing. Like, if you have an hour and a half conversation with somebody and you get it to look for the nuances that would have escaped your attention, it'll sometimes come up with and say, you missed, this is an actual partnership opportunity, not a sales opportunity. I'm like, well, really? It'll tell you all that stuff. Or it will also tell you this person is really highly focused on numbers. So make sure anything you present covers those numbers. I could go on and on. There's a million different things that you could use, but
I know. I can imagine. So, I mean, there'll be a transcript, obviously, of this podcast, and I guess people can just copy and paste that and use that in after their meetings. I have heard of the little note takers. I mean, they're kind of a modern day. What do we used to call the dictaphone, isn't it? But it's linked it directly into AI, which is fantastic as a Claude note. Okay, so got to have at least 3 LLMs, all paid versions, not negotiable. And like you said, if you cannot save enough time to pay for that $60, $70, then you've got doing something wrong. You've got to learn how to structure your prompts, save your prompts, and create knowledge-based documents that can actually be re-referred to, so you're not reinventing the wheel every time. And then use your AI to learn about yourself and the way that you engage, interact in your meetings.
yeah, uncover stuff that you would have overlooked, right?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Gosh, there's so much there. I mean, I'm sure I might actually invite you back again, because I'm sure there's a whole lot more I'd love to talk about. But if people do want to find out more, obviously you've got your book, which is the Ingrained book. And you said there was a course as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so they could go to ingrain.ai, or they could go to bizzuka.com, bizzuka.com. So we have our courses there. We do a lot of corporate training, so you can connect with us there if you want to go get into some corporate training. And, like I mentioned earlier, we have implementers all over the globe now. So if we can't service you directly, we can put you in touch with someone who can. So yeah, that would be it. I would say go to bazooka.com first. The other thing I would do, so I'll give you this one other thing, Deborah. My goal is to write the second version of the book. So it's not a new version of the book per se. It's where, after working with companies for the last year and a half, where people need to go after they implement the things in this book. There's a whole new thing that they need to be working on. I'm in the middle of writing that book. It should be out hopefully by the end of April. Famous last words, though, last a whole lot longer than it did. If they will go to ingrain.ai/2026, which is my fuse that I'm putting on myself to make sure I get that book out, they can register there to get on the waiting list. And if they tell me that they heard about this through your podcast, I will give them a free digital copy of the book when it comes out. So that would be the last way they could get in touch with me.
Beautiful. No, that sounds great. Thank you so much for that. And obviously the implementers that you've got around the globe there. So that's for people like me who love to outsource everything, isn't it? So if I don't want to learn all this myself, I can actually have somebody come in and actually help me to get Jen up to speed, to get the team up to speed, to sort of help us put this stuff into place to make the most of it.
That's correct. Yes.
I'm liking that idea very much. Hey, John, lovely to see you again. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your knowledge. I'm sure I will speak to you again. I'm looking forward to sort of, hearing it, because it's just going to get better and better and better as time goes on, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's like we said, today is the worst AI you'll ever see. So,
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
it ain't so bad, right? Well, it's been a pleasure being on your show. I appreciate it. It's great seeing you and connecting again. So.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you too.